Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca, and if we haven't gotten to meet yet, I would love to meet you in the comments below. Today I'm bringing you a much anticipated and highly requested moss pole tutorial video. So if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you have some sort of hanging or climbing plant, a monstera deliciosa, something, and you're noticing that it needs a pole to start climbing up. So the number one indication that your plant needs a pole or something to climb up would be as the branches are getting longer, the leaves are getting smaller. And another reason that you might need one is if your monstera deliciosa is starting to grow in all directions, searching for light, typically to the sides, which for me was a big no-no, and that plant actually ended up dying because I tried to fix it. So quick plant lesson before we get started. All of these plants that climb, these plants are called epiphytes. And that's basically a fancy word to say that these plants in their natural environment grow up other trees or other plants. So they grow along the bark and end up being really, really beautiful, especially the monstera. So I'm going to show you how to duplicate that environment in your home in a potted plant. Let's get into making them. To make a moss pole, you're going to need a few items: a pole of some sort, floral wire or twine, and moss, of course, the main component of this entire thing. Here's what you need to look for in all of these products. So for the pole, you want to make sure that you are using a pole that will not rot in the soil with your plant, because as you're watering, it's going to be getting wet with the soil. I used a PVC pipe. I think that a PVC pipe is a really affordable and great option for this. I chose to use floral wire just because it's a bit sturdier and easier to build upon. So what I used is a sheet moss that I got from Walmart. I made my first moss pole with my grandma, and she lives in a kind of smallish town, and we found sheet moss, and it's usually used in, like, I don't know actually, like on top of houses, in figurine houses. I don't even know if this is the correct way to say it, but anyway, it's not typically meant for plants, but it works totally fine. This sheet moss is green, so I think that it blends in with my jungle vibe a little bit more than the traditional tan sphagnum moss. You definitely want to make sure that your pole is sterilized, especially the part that's going into the soil. So next you want to decide how long you want the pole to be. There's a lot of different types of pipe cutters. I'll link a few down below. Okay, step 2 is to lay out the moss. The sheet moss that I used was really easy to just cut through with basic scissors. I cut it so that it would overlap once at least. Alright, so step 3 is to wrap the pole with the moss, and just wrap it kind of tight, as tight as you can, but it's not really going to make a difference if it's super loose because you're going to be tying it on. Next, step 4, you're going to cut your wires in long strips so that you can tie them up and down the pole. So I cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of wire, and basically I just tied it in that first knot that you make when you're tying your shoes, and then twisted them together a few times, and then pulled it off to the side and stuck the extra ends inside of the moss. It should be really cushiony, and the moss should pretty much absorb the wire. I didn't want any raw edges from the wire sticking out, just in case eventually the plant comes into contact with that part of the pole, and I didn't want it to poke the plant or something like that, so I just made sure to dig those ends back into the moss. So step 5, which I would say is optional, is to add a sort of casing around the pole. A lot of moss poles that you buy online have like a netting around it, and my grandma and I were trying to reproduce something like that. So in the first moss pole I made, I did have plastic fence thing that she had just on hand, and there's nothing wrong with it. I liked it. However, in the second moss pole that I made, I just didn't think it was necessary, so I just left that part out. Step 6 is to plant the moss pole in your pot. I realize that a lot of moss poles you can buy have a smaller like stake at the bottom of it, and that will probably stop the problem that I ran into with this certain moss pole that I made. It's not a big deal, but it is just a small hurdle. So the pole is actually quite thick, at least in my case, so when I went to pot it with the plant, it took up a lot of space, like more than I expected, and so I had to pot up a size bigger than I normally would, just so everything wouldn't be scrunched up in there, and that has not affected my plant in any way. The space is being taken up by the pole, so it's the same amount of soil that I would normally put It's just that there's a pole in there instead of more roots from the plant. Alright guys, there you have it. Now you have your own De La Plante style moss pole. Is that a thing? Let's make it a thing. So if you have any questions about the process, please leave a comment down below, or you can even message me on Instagram. But yeah, so if you end up making this moss pole, make sure that you take a picture and tag me in it on Instagram, or DM me the photo if you're not on Plantstagram. My Instagram handle is De La Plante, and I can't wait to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found it helpful in any way, you can bookmark it by liking this video and subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!